Have you ever met someone who didn't feel new, but familiar? A person who didn't enter your life, they returned to it. No drama, no butterflies, no chaos, just a quiet recognition that shook you deeper than any love story ever did. If you felt this, even once, this video is for you. Because Alan Watts believed that when two awakened souls meet, it isn't romance, it's remembrance. It's consciousness recognizing itself. And that's why it feels different. There's no chasing, no pretending, no fear of losing. Only presence, clarity in a connection that feels older than your body. In the next minutes, we're going to explore what truly happens when two conscious beings find each other. Why the bond feels effortless, why the silence between you feels sacred, and why the relationship becomes a gateway to growth rather than a battlefield of wounds. If you've ever felt a connection that didn't make sense logically, but felt true spiritually, you're about to understand why. Be honest with yourself for a moment. How many times have you entered a relationship not because you were full, but because you were empty? Not because you felt ready, but because you felt lonely. Not because you were whole, but because you were tired of your own silence. Most people watching this right now have lived this cycle without even noticing. You meet someone, and suddenly your mind starts working overtime. Do they like me? Did I say the wrong thing? Why didn't they answer yet? What if they leave? And just like that, your peace evaporates. You try harder, give more, please more, bend more, even when it hurts. Because deep down, you're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of being left alone with yourself again. You know that feeling, don't you? That heavy, anxious love where you're constantly adjusting your tone, your personality, your needs. Not to be understood, but to be chosen, to be enough, to be safe. And then it gets worse. A small disagreement becomes a disaster. A little distance becomes a threat. Their silence becomes your self-doubt. Suddenly, you're not in a relationship. You're in a negotiation with your own wounds. This is the truth most people don't want to admit. Most people don't fall in love. They fall into each other's wounds. They call it passion, but it's anxiety. They call it connection, but it's trauma. They call it love, but it's fear wearing a mask. And if what I'm describing feels painfully familiar, it's because you've only experienced ordinary love. Awakened love, the one this video talks about, is something completely different. Something shifts inside you when you awaken. Suddenly, you're no longer chasing people. You're no longer begging for attention, forcing conversations, or trying to prove your worth. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you finally see the truth. You were never incomplete. Before awakening, you entered relationships from emptiness. After awakening, you enter from overflow. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. You don't need someone to save you, fix you, or fill the silence. You don't tolerate chaos disguised as passion or manipulation disguised as love. Your nervous system stops confusing anxiety with excitement. You begin to crave peace more than intensity, honesty more than flattery, presence more than attention, a connection that nourishes you, not one that drains you. And here's the part that will hit home for a lot of people watching this. You start losing interest in people who don't know how to love without fear, people who need drama to feel alive, people who confuse possession with intimacy, people who mistake your calm for lack of feeling, people who want your energy but not your truth. Because the moment you awaken, you understand something profoundly simple. You cannot build a conscious relationship with someone who is still asleep. Awakening changes the way you love. You no longer seek intensity, you seek depth. You no longer seek someone to lean on. You seek someone to stand with. You no longer seek a partner out of need, but out of freedom. That's what makes awakened relationships so rare. They begin where ordinary relationships fall apart. In wholeness, not hunger and clarity, not desperation. In truth, not illusion. Only a soul that has met itself is ready to meet another awakened soul. When two awakened souls meet, something extraordinary happens. The connection doesn't feel like discovering someone. It feels like remembering someone. Like you're not meeting a stranger, but a reflection. There's no rush, no panic, no performance. You don't feel the need to impress, to hide, to shrink, or to shine. You simply exist naturally, effortlessly. Because for the first time, someone can hold your truth without trembling. This is what Alan Watts meant when he said that awakened relationships are mirrors. You're not seeing another person. You're seeing your own level of consciousness reflected back at you. That's why awakened connections feel calm instead of chaotic, silent instead of loud, deep instead of dramatic. You're not being triggered. You're being understood. Think about the ordinary connections you've had. You felt the need to explain yourself, justify your emotions, defend your boundaries. But with an awakened soul, you don't need to explain anything. They see it. They feel it. They recognize it. Because they had to walk through the same fire to awaken. Here's what hits hardest. When two awakened souls meet, you don't meet their personality. You meet their presence. You meet their awareness. You meet their journey. You meet the version of yourself you've been trying to become. Conversations stop being battles of ego and become gateways to truth. Silence stops being awkward and becomes a form of intimacy. Time stops feeling measured and becomes irrelevant. It's not two minds interacting. It's two consciousnesses remembering each other. You don't cling. You don't chase. You don't pretend. Because in their eyes, you finally see the one thing you've been searching for your entire life: yourself. In ordinary relationships, fear is always hiding underneath the surface. Fear of losing someone, fear of not being enough, fear of being replaced, abandoned, forgotten. And where there is fear, there will always be control. That's why so many relationships slowly suffocate. People start monitoring each other's tone, messages, availability, friendships. They call it care, but it's possession wearing a mask. Awakened souls don't play this game, not because they're detached, but because they finally understand the truth. You cannot love someone and try to own them at the same time. Awakened love is not a cage, it's a space. When two conscious beings meet, they don't lock each other down. They don't demand constant reassurance. They don't panic at silence or distance, because they know something the unconscious mind can't grasp. Real connection doesn't need to be controlled to survive. Here's what hits hardest. You trust them not because they promised, but because their presence feels too aligned to lie. You give them freedom not because you're indifferent, but because you know the soul cannot love under pressure. And the paradox is beautiful. The more freedom you give, the deeper the intimacy becomes. The more space you allow, the more the connection breathes. The less you try to hold on, the closer they move toward you. No jealousy, no fear of replacement, no obsession with what they're doing when you're not there. Because awakened love isn't built on fear, it's built on recognition. You don't say, "You're mine." You say, "You're free and I choose you anyway." And they choose you back, not from need, not from emptiness, but from awareness. In awakened relationships, possession dies and intimacy finally comes alive. When two awakened souls meet, something subtle but extraordinary happens. The ordinary becomes sacred. There's no need for dramatic declarations, no need for constant intensity or fireworks. The connection expresses itself in the quietest details. details most people overlook because they're too busy chasing emotional highs. Awakened love doesn't thrive in chaos. It thrives in presence. It's the way they breathe next to you in silence. Not rushing to fill the moment, not trying to impress, simply being. It's how a simple walk feels like traveling through lifetimes. How making coffee together feels more intimate than grand romantic gestures. How looking into their eyes feels like stepping into a memory you never lived, and yet somehow always knew. This is why awakened relationships look boring from the outside. There's no drama, no roller coaster, no obsession masquerading as passion. Just two people who have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Awakened souls don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. They just need presence. And that presence turns the mundane into something almost divine. The sound of pages turning while you both read. The softness of a shared blanket. The way they listen, not waiting for their turn to speak, but actually hearing you. The gentle passing of objects, the shared glances, the quiet laughter that isn't loud, but real, nothing extravagant, nothing theatrical, just truth. Because in awakened love, the moment itself is enough. The connection gives everything an aura, as if the universe is breathing through the ordinary, and you realize something profound. It wasn't the world that changed. It was your awareness that finally woke up to its beauty. The world taught you that love is about finding someone who completes you. Someone who fills your missing pieces, heals your wounds, fixes your loneliness. But awakened souls know a different truth. No one completes you. They reveal you. Awakened love doesn't come into your life to repair your brokenness. It comes to show you the parts of yourself you abandoned. It comes to reflect your growth, your fears, your strengths, your shadows. Not to judge you, but to make you conscious of who you truly are. And here's what most people never realize. Conscious relationships aren't built to keep you comfortable. They are built to keep you awake. They push you in the gentlest way, not through conflict, but through clarity, not through demands, but through presence, not through intensity, but through truth. With an awakened soul, you're not trying to merge into one person. You're learning how to stand side by side as two whole beings, two paths walking together, not collapsing into each other. You don't become half of a relationship. You become twice yourself. Because awakened love is not a fusion. It's a mirror. It doesn't say, you complete me. It says, I see you fully. And being seen without distortion is one of the rarest experiences in the human journey. The purpose of awakened love is not attachment, it's transformation. It's remembering who you were before fear shaped you. It's discovering new parts of yourself simply because another soul has the depth to recognize them. When two awakened souls meet, they don't pull each other up. They rise together, not out of need, but out of awareness. This is why conscious relationships feel both peaceful and powerful, because they're not built on filling a void. They're built on expanding consciousness. Two whole beings reflecting each other's evolution, and you finally understand, love wasn't meant to complete you. It was meant to awaken you. Fear is the foundation of almost every ordinary relationship. Fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough, fear of losing someone who feels like your only source of love. Fear turns relationships into emotional prisons, even when both people mean well. But awakened souls move differently. They've learned that love built on fear isn't love, it's dependency. And when two conscious beings meet, something miraculous happens. The fear disappears, not because they try to be fearless, but because there's nothing left to fear. There's no fear of silence, because they don't mistake quiet for distance. There's no fear of space, because they don't confuse autonomy with abandonment. There's no fear of honesty, Because truth is the foundation, not the threat. There's no fear of losing each other, because each one knows how to stand alone. This is where awakened love becomes unmistakably different. You don't cling, you don't chase, you don't panic. You simply trust the connection because it feels aligned with your soul, not with your insecurities. And for the first time in your life, you experience what love feels like without anxiety, without guessing games, without emotional roller coasters, without constant overthinking, without holding your breath every time something changes. Awakened love breathes, it rests, it expands. It gives you room to be human. It gives you room to grow. It gives you room to exist without being on alert. And here's the most important realization. When love stops being scary, it finally becomes safe enough to be deep. Because the truth is simple and devastating. Ordinary relationships crumble the moment fear enters. Awakened relationships deepen the moment fear leaves. And that's why, with an awakened soul, you don't say, "Please don't leave me." You say, "I trust the space between us." Because in that space, love isn't lost, it's strengthened. When two awakened souls meet, they don't fuse into one. They don't collapse into each other's stories. They don't drown in intensity or lose themselves in emotion. They simply begin to orbit, two complete worlds moving in harmony. No need to cling, no need to chase, no need to convince, impress, or perform. Just presence, meeting presence. People often think awakened love is louder, brighter, more dramatic, but it's quieter, gentler, more intimate than intensity could ever be, because conscious souls understand something most people never learn. Love doesn't live in the merging. It lives in the space between. The space where you can breathe, where you can grow, where you can rest in yourself and still reach the other, where nothing is forced, nothing is threatened, and everything is allowed to unfold in its own time. Alan Watts said that true connection is like two stars, separate, sovereign, radiant, whose light touches long before their bodies ever could. That's awakened love, not possession, not dependency, not desperation, just recognition. So if you've ever felt a connection that was calm instead of chaotic, magnetic instead of desperate, deep instead of dramatic, you didn't imagine it. It was your soul remembering. It was consciousness meeting itself. It was the universe whispering through two bodies, two minds, two hearts. Look, this is what it feels like when two awakened souls meet.